Hi everybody, so we've got the bananas. So I'm working on pastel matte paper here, surprise, surprise. The color is the butternut color, I think it's called nowadays. And I used the second size up in the pad, so the 25 centimeters by 29 or 30 centimeters, but I made it a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit more square-ish. And so I've got some pale. Oh my gosh, this is a great start to this one. Oh my gosh. Sorry, let's try that again. So on the back of my photocopy here of the bananas, I've just put some new pastel and I used like a sienna type color. And I am now just tracing over, just using a Kitty's pastel pencil to do it. This is how I mostly start my pastel paintings. Just tracing over those lines. I'm not being too careful because when it comes to actually pasteling, I do tend to do quite a bit of the work then, the drawing, if you like. So I'm quite rough with my tracings. So the photo reference I set up myself here in my dining room. My husband put up a little nail in the wall and I just took this bunch of bananas with a little bit of string and I hung them up, and then I had a torch on the left hand side so that would give me this nice dramatic shadow, and my husband took the shot. So I held up the torch for my lighting and he took the shot, nice and easy. Now there you can see I've got a nice outline of where the bananas are going to go. Now I do change it, as in the color of the wall. I fancied a bit of like a baby blue sort of color. Something about it is very summery and tropical. You know, I think of that pastel baby blue and oranges and pinks and yellow. Just reminds me of tropical sunshine, you know, like a turquoisey, but not a dark turquoise. Excuse me. Oh, I've got a frog in my throat. So somewhere between like a baby blue and turquoise. So I figured, let me try that in the background. So I've got here this beautiful pale turquoise from Mount Vision. And the number there is 634. Yeah, you can see it. Wonderful. Because the last few demos, it's been so blurry. But anyway, yes, so instead of going for just the white background, like so in the photo reference, the white background, to me it looks very dull. You know, it's gray basically, and I wanted a pop of color rather. Now I could have also gone with violets, like pale lilac colors, and then really amped up the violets in the shadow, because the opposite of yellow is purple, so that would have worked really nicely as well. And I was thinking, you know, in the future I may do that, where I use opposites to make the painting more interesting and give it some, basically some interest. But I decided, like I said, for this one, I was feeling the vibes of pale blue and yellow. That's light 15 from Unison. So adding just a little bit of that. So that was my inspiration. Summer, water with bananas. Oh dear. Okay, so here we've got bringing in a little bit more of a blue violet. Yep, you can't see that one, can ya? Back to my old tricks I am. Oh, and I can't remember what the color, what the code is of this one, but you can see it's got a little bit more purple in it. Just a hint, it's more like a blue violet rather than a turquoisey kind of blue. And I think that works quite well for a base as a shadow. It's also quite colorful. Like I said, that's what I wanted, where I do these little paintings of fruit on the wall, where I usually play up the color of the wall. I think it's fun. And I think, yeah, having color on your wall is just really, it looks pleasing. So, yeah. So this is another blue that I just found. Again, it's another pale blue, but it's a little bit darker than that first one we laid down by Mount Vision. Back in with my shadow color. Now, there is areas of the shadow that I will darken up, and you'll see that as I go along. But you've seen me put in hundreds of backgrounds by now, so I'm just going to leave you here as I continue putting in my background the good old way of laying in pigment, giving it a good rub into the paper, and continuing that process till I get till I'm happy with the way the painting's looking. So this is me darkening up the shadow. It's a grey that's got a little hint of blue in it. It's like a bluey grey, quite dark though, but when it's smudged in with the other pigments that I've got underneath, it's not as intense, and it works quite nicely because those pigments are mingling, which is softening the colour out, and it's looking more like a shadow because those colours are mixing, and I've got no harsh edges as well. Okay, so now you can see the difference in color. I don't know how to correct that. I'm going to have to ask my hubby. This is looking a little bit too blue than what it is in real life. I would say the previous recording is more true to the color. It's not quite as blue as this. So starting with the nail, I'm just taking a black pastel pencil, marking in the nail as well as the dark side of the strip, the string. I think I need to go back to sleep today. Obviously my brain isn't functioning. Goodness me, it's only 30 degrees here in the UK. Maybe it's got something to do with that. But anyway, right, so I'm putting in my darks, putting in the black of this banana, where it grows on the tips there, where it's attached to the tree or the branch. And I'm just using plain black for that. Then you'll see me come over with some raw umber, just so it's not quite so dead. But I did want these to be dark because, you know, if you look at the banana in real life, these parts of the banana are pretty black. So I've got a nice sharp tip on my pastel pencil, which also makes a change. And so it can get me those nice thin lines. Also with the pastel pencil, I've got more confidence with the placement of the pastel. Like here I'm using this chunky stick and I'm being pretty careful, really trying to aim so that I get that pigment exactly where I want it. This is kind of like a mid-tone grey, also working the shadow parts. And then darkening with the same grey that I used in the shadow. This blue grey from Unison. I think it's grey 34. But also the pastel pencils, you can really aim much better, obviously because it's a small point. So it's much easier to aim than a chunky stick like what I'm doing here. And I didn't want tons of dark pastel pigment obviously in the background, because then you've got to start tidying up. And when you're working on such a light background, you do have to be a bit more careful when working with dark colors for your subject. Like I said, because I mean you can clean up. So if I got a bit of black on this background, I can just clean it up, put some more blue pastel on, and job's done. But sometimes it doesn't always work because you filled the tooth of the paper. Then of course you can spray some workable fixative, and that will give you a little bit more surface area, because it kind of like melts the pastel pigment and it gives you a little bit more maneuver to layer some more pastel on. But you don't really want to be faffing around, is what I'm trying to say. So I find that when I'm working with dark colors, actually using the pastel pencil is actually quite useful for that. Like I said, because you can get that pigment exactly where you want it. Now, so I don't smear the dark pigment everywhere for the shadow, I've used an oh gosh, I really can't talk today. An earbud. There we go. Just because my finger is just too fat, so an earbud has got that thinner surface area. So it just works really well for these delicate areas. Like I said, I really don't want to be doing loads of cleanup here because we are working a darker subject matter on a light background. So I do tend to be a little bit more careful. Just moving some pigment into place with this mid-tone grey, and then coming in for the lightest part, which is the white. That wasn't really showing up too well. I do go a notch darker. Later on you'll see me do that, because right now it's not, there's too much of a gap between the white and the grey on the string. So this is the lightest value of a grey that I'm using. just to bridge the gap a little bit more. Like I said, it was just too stark between the mid-tone grey and the white. I needed a colour in between there. Here I'm going over with like a it's like a ochre brown colour. You can see that's looking a bit better. It's not so stark between the white and grey. It's making a little bit more sense. So there's some highlight in this area, so I just decided to map it in with my white pastel pencil, and then going over with this very dark green by Mount Vision, starting off with my dark green, and then we'll build that up to the lighter green, the yellow green tones. It's my 177 Faber-Castell, which is a dark brown, and my face. Hello. Oh dear. Oh no. It got a bit stuck there. My internet must have dropped out. Then coming in with this dark green by Carbothello. It's the old version of pencils, so the numbers don't correlate to the modern ones. But it's like a dark khaki green, very similar to the actual pastel that I put down in the first place. This is a brighter green, green 35 by Unison, and you can see it's got some nice yellow tones in there. So it works really well, I think, with like the pale blue, the yellow of the bananas, and then bringing in some more of yellow green. And this is an even paler yellow green, just again for those little highlights. Very delicately rubbing into that area. Like I said, I don't want to be smudging my pigment of my subject into the background. But if you do, like I said previously, it's not the end of the world. It's fine. You can fix it. But it's just faffing about. And I just didn't want to faff. Don't want to make mistakes, you know, if it's unnecessarily. And they can be avoided, really. This is a very pale cream by Faber-Castell. Again, just bringing a little bit more light into that area. It seems like my internet keeps dropping out. Had a little glitch earlier. So you're taking this light cream, pale yellow, and just marking in my little light bits. I do go over though with a pastel stick, because as you can see that light isn't really showing up, because obviously your pastel pencils, when you've got pastel stick pigment as the base layer, sometimes it can be quite tricky to come in and put pastel pencil over. It's not quite punchy enough. So I will come over with pastel stick. It's my grey 13 from Unison. Trusty old grey 13, you know I love it. Like I've said before, this is probably my most repeated pastel colour besides white. I just love it because it's not a dead black. It's so dark. It looks black, but there is a browniness in there, which I really like. So it's great for these ends of the bananas. Works really well. Then taking in some of my, this is actually Green Umber by Art Spectrum. It's not the extra soft range, it's just their soft range. So it's still a soft pastel, but it's not as soft as the other pastels in their range. And I'm just adding a little bit of definition to the black parts. There, I'm trying to show you. Oh my gosh. Greenish umber. There we go. Just to, yes, add, sorry, I heard this crackling and I was like, is it starting to rain? Because it looks like it wants to rain, but no, it's not raining. I don't know what that crackling sound is. Oh, it's the speaker. Anyway, yeah, because there are, if you have a look, you can see some brown in the black bits of the banana. There I'm going in with the darker green. Just adding a little bit more of a darker green. I felt like the color was too same in the green part there. Again, just using my black pastel pencil to get a little bit more of a neater shape, tidy up some of those edges. Like I've said, pastel pencils work a treat because they've got nice sharp points. So you can really maneuver pigment around that you've placed on there from the soft pastel sticks, and just tidy up some edging. Really useful, really enjoy using them. So I've got Lady Godiva on the board. I've got my line drawing out, I should say, on the pastel matte paper. And I'm definitely, the more I look at it, because there's just so much detail, and I'm painting her quite small. She's going to be 49 centimeters by 40 centimeters, and I'm going to be using a lot of pastel pencils, I've decided. Sorry, that's all I'm telling you. Pastel pencils, very, very useful. So this is a gorgeous, kind of like a gold green, and it's from Terry Ludwig, the Darks Intense 1 set. Like I said, I really like this, and I thought of putting this in the shadows to start. So that's what I'm doing here. You'll see me, I'll come in with darker oranges, and but this is just me making a start. This is me feeling out, how do I want to do these, I was going to say potatoes, they're definitely not potatoes. How am I going to do the coloring on these bananas? Obviously, in the reference photograph, the shadow is very browny, blacky, gray. I didn't want that. I wanted more of a vibrant shadow. And my thinking was, okay, so these are bananas. On the color wheel, they are yellow. Now, the yellow in some parts can lean towards the green, but perhaps there can also be a dark reddy brown. So that was my thinking. Let me get some dark greeny yellow in for the shadows. I found it wasn't dark enough, so you'll see I'll go darker now with some dark reddy browns. But that was my thinking, rather than going in with a gray, for example, because when you take a photograph, the shadows really do not do the shadows in real life any justice, because it does tend to just gray them down or black them out. You know, they tend to get a dull, lifeless color to them, and I definitely didn't want to do that. So that's why I went in with a different approach, just thinking about, these are yellow, I need to make a darker yellow, but not too orange either, because like I said, there is a greeniness to these bananas. So a dark greeny yellow, but I didn't want it to be too muddy, because I wanted, got this beautiful pastel blue background, so I wanted to keep them quite yellow and like yellow green. So that's a lot of rambling. That was my thought process, for a long-winded way for me to talk about my approach to the shadows. That was just a little bit of the blue. There was a little spot that I had missed in the background, so I was just putting that in. And so here you can see I'm taking this dark egg yolk yellow by Sennelier, and I'm putting that in just in the shadow areas. Right now it's definitely too orange, but it's the top layer, so I wasn't too freaked out, because I knew it's going to soften and the vibrancy will go down. Yet there will still be the shadow will still be more interesting than just like a gray shadow, because I've got this beautiful vibrant orange. So just trying to fix it down at the bottom there. This is another Sennelier, and it's got more yellow in it than the one I've just laid down. But this is coming to the end now of part 1. I'll leave you here for the next half a minute or so, and I shall see you again in part 2. Right, hi everybody. So continuing on from part 1. So I'm taking this yellow, it's a little bit of Richardson, Jack Richardson, and also it's a greeny yellow. It's lighter than the yellows I've put, the orangey yellows I've put down so far. You can see it's got a greeniness, but it's lighter than that very first Terry Ludwig green yellow that I put down. So I'm just feeling my way, choosing, like I said, yellows, orangey yellows, but also really needing that greeniness of a banana to show through in the color also. So just using a little bit of this. I'm not pressing hard. A light touch as always. I don't want to fill the tooth of the paper, especially because I really want to be able to achieve the color of the bananas. Not so much in the reference photo as I discussed in part 1, because that's looking very dull and grayish. I'm wanting to keep this almost like pastel tones, bright tones, like thinking tropical, something about Hawaii, like a Hawaiian yellow and blue. That was my kind of feeling because I'd watched that documentary on the shark whisperer. It's on Netflix. Ocean, what's her surname? I forgot her surname. Anyway, the one who swims with sharks. And that was based in Hawaii. And I was like, oh. So I have no idea if bananas grow in Hawaii, but that was the color inspiration for this. Oh dear, next door drilling. So yeah, the drilling's over, so I can continue. So holiday, tropical, that's kind of how I was feeling. So that's why I chose these colors. Just neatening up a little bit around the edge. You can see it's looking dodgy. The banana is looking all winky wonk around there. But as I build up, I do concentrate on getting those edges nice. Obviously, some edges are soft edges, so like in the shadow. Any shadow areas on the banana and on the wall, you want nice soft edges, otherwise it looks strange. But then there will also be some hard edges in certain parts. So here you can see I'm just fixing this whole edge, just using like an ochre colored pencil from Carbothello. But yeah, that's the trick. Like lots of cartoonish or illustration styles have a lot of hard edges in their work, where realism tends to be more soft edges with a few hard edges here and there. If you think about a stylized drawing or something very graphic like an illustration, there's a lot of hard edges. But when you think of something that's painted realistically, there are not that many hard edges, especially when like with figures. If you look at the face, the way the face is painted, for someone who paints in realism, they're creating that 3D form not by using lines like hard edges, but a lot of soft edges, so lots of transitioning from different tonal values. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that. But for me, I'm like, there are some hard edges in here. And that's what I was just mapping in. Also helping me describe. And you can always go back and be like, if this is looking a little bit cartoony, not quite right, have a look at your edges and see if you've got too many outlines. And it's so easy with pastel because you can just smudge those and fade those in to make them kind of disappear and kind of like melt into the painting. Oh my gosh, that's my child screaming outside. She's got a play date. Sorry, so it's not screaming. It's like joyful, happy screaming. But when mommy is trying to record a voiceover, it makes it a little bit tricky. Anyway. So over here, just my Carbothello black, mapping out the end of the banana, that very black part. I'm sure it has a proper name, but I have no idea what it is. So just getting in my shape, like I've said, pastel pencils, amazing. They really, you can just get your shape in straight away, and then you can tinker with the soft pastels and bring in some more life using different tonal values. But look at that. Nice, crisp, easy shape. As I said, this painting is not large at all. I mean, the bananas are probably the size of my hand, finger to palm. So really not big at all. So pastel pencils come in a treat. Really, really helpful. I really do love them. As I've said in other demos, I just really, really wished that companies would expand their color range to include, I don't know, because I just love color. You should see my oil painting wall. Literally, how many oil paints have I done in my life? Probably 10. And I literally have all these tubes of paint just because I love color. It's just so wonderful. So I'm a sucker for color. Yes, it's true. But for pastel pencils, obviously, I know you can make your colors. If you're doing a skin tone, for example, you can lay on a green, a blue, and a red, and you will get skin tone values. I do understand that. But I'm just greedy and I really wish there'd be more nuanced colors like you get in a pastel range, for example, a soft pastel range. They've got all nuances of all different colors. It would be awesome if a pastel pencil company could, you know, expand a range. Can you imagine a range of 250 pastel pencil colors? Anyway, so that's me yabbering on. That is 177 dark brown. And I know, and part of me feels guilty because it's like consumerism, isn't it? We could go on a whole tangent about that, like purchasing colors you don't actually need because you can create them. And part of being an artist and learning the skill of color is literally having as few colors in front of you and being able to create a whole painting out of that, because it's, they'll say it teaches you so many things, which obviously it does. It teaches you how color relates to each other and how you can obtain the colors yourself rather than purchasing the exact color. You'll see even sometimes in my work here, I won't have the exact color I need. I've got to create the color. But I am a sucker for art supplies. So yeah, my bad, but I do like it very much. Going back in with my black pastel pencil, refining. Just to go back to my edges, because I kind of outlined the bananas, so you can see, the viewer can see we've got 4 bananas. We've got the 3 obvious bananas, and then got that sneaky little one down at the bottom. So that's why I was using hard edges with the pastel pencil, just to differentiate for my brain, for now, between the different bananas. And then you'll see me build them up and soften some of those edges again. Anyway, I thought I would just clarify a little bit on that. So I went in with some of my trusty old Unison's Grey 13. And then here we've got some Green Umber by Art Spectrum, bringing in a little bit of light. There we go. So not leaving them as black blobs at the bottom of the banana. Wanting to create that 3D illusion more. So how do we do that? We do that by bringing in a different tonal value. Back over with my 177 Faber-Castell brown. I love this brown. It's a really useful brown to have. And I do enjoy the Faber-Castells pit pastel pencils. I don't have many of them actually. I've got a few, but I do enjoy them very much. So again, there's me just kind of darkening down for that cheeky little banana at the bottom there. But yeah, I do mean to purchase some more of them, because I just like, are they easy to sharpen? I think, excuse me, they feel a little bit harder than the Carbothellos. I don't know if that's just in my brain. And I can get a nice sharp point on them. So yeah, I do rate those. I like those very much. So I'm going to leave you now for a few minutes while I just go around fixing up my edges of the bananas, adding some more color, working on my shadow. If I feel like there's something useful that I can add, I will pop back in. Oh, and here's my brilliant skills of showing you the number. That was Sennelier 600. I've just had to go and have a look. And it's this beautiful, it's actually brighter in real life than what it looks on here. But starting to think about that high yellow light. Well, high yellow light. Starting to think about that beautiful bright yellow where the light is hitting the most. So yeah, and Sennelier, like I say all the time in my demos, if you want pops of vibrant, intense color, Sennelier is usually where I go. They just never disappoint. Incredible for high pops of color. Obviously, other brands do them too, but I just tend to go to Sennelier because I know they've got a range of very saturated colors. Here's also another little piece of Sennelier. I'm not sure what it is exactly. It's just a little piece, often I have so many pastels, like I actually don't keep the paper on my pastels for the numbers. If it's a pastel I use a lot, like I really love and I use a lot and I can see it can be useful, I do tend to memorize those numbers. But for a lot of them, like this is probably definitely a cadmium medium, I would say. But for a lot of my pastels, they don't have any wrappers on and they are just categorized into color family. So they'll be on a tray of yellow. So I've just picked up my tray of yellow and I'm using these different yellows. That's how I use my pastels. For a long time, when I first set of pastels that I purchased were Rembrandts, the half sticks. That was brilliant. I think I paid 60 quid for 64 colors, but they were half sticks, which is a great way to purchase soft pastels, I think, because you can get quite a lot of color quite quickly, and there's only half a stick. So yeah, that was a great purchase. That was my first purchase. But very quickly I moved on to collecting unisons, which are also amazing. So I know quite a lot of the unison numbers because that's mainly what I used for a good year or two before I started adding different brands to my collection. Also unisons, they skyrocketed in price. They became very, very expensive. It used to be, I think I started out, it was £2.95 a stick. Now they're 5 quid or even over £5.20. Anyway, so, but then I've got my unison. I think, the more you pasteling, you will get your favorites, the ones you use time and time again. Like I say, the Grey 13 from Unison is one of my all-time faves, use over and over again. Sennelier, I think, are still reasonable. You can pick them up for about £3.20. Like Great Art have a sale on at the moment. So this is Saturday, the 19th of July, 2025. I always try and look for a sale or a deal because pastels, or art supplies are really, really expensive. So anywhere I can get a deal, I'm always looking around. And then I'll buy a few of my favorite colors. But anyway, long-winded way to say Sennelier, pops of incredibly intense color, that is where I go. But they are very soft. So they fill the tooth of the paper quicker than, say, Unison or a Mount Vision. Mount Vision, also amazing pastels. Get them through Jackson's. They produced, I think it's Florida in the States. he's got great colors as well, and I love the texture of Mount Vision. But they've just got so expensive. I think they're also near £5 now for a stick. Anyway, I sound like this is like an ad for art supplies. It's not. I'm sorry. I'm just chatting to you a little bit about supplies because I do have a love for art supplies. Okay, so going back to just fixing up my edges, sorting out, re-establishing which banana, and re-establishing shadows. That was just like an ochre color from Carbothello. So coming in with darker reddy browns to really again enhance the shadows. Now, as I spoke in chapter one, no, in part one, in the reference photograph, obviously the shadows of that banana are looking very grey. but I want to stay away from that. And instead of going for grays, I'm going to go for dark yellows. So what are dark yellows? We think of browns, oranges, dark oranges, browns, yellowy, orangey browns. So rather going for that color family, staying within the yellow, orange range, rather than going into the gray, like black, gray, that a photo reference would give you. Here I am toning it down with the green at the end, but it's not a very bright green. It is still a green that is quite a yellow based green, but it's not like a jumping, whooping in your face kind of green. It's like a kind of swampy, khaki sort of green. Mushing it all in so everything's nice and smooth. So the texture of a banana is really smooth and soft. So I want to convey that with my pastels. At the very end, I'll go over with the brown pastel pencil and put in all the, the dents and the marks that you get on banana skin. But for now, I want to build up a smooth layer. Going back in with this orangey brown for the shadows. So over here, I'm working a little bit now on the shadow, and again that edge where the banana and obviously the banana is sitting in front of the wall, but in terms of the painting, it's where the banana and the wall meet. So just tidying up that edge as well as up at the top there. Now you also saw me put in the lighter value of yellow. Again, that was a little piece of Sennelier, as well as putting some more of that cadmium yellow into the shadow of the banana. Still bringing that yellow. It almost looks a little bit like it's glowing, which is kind of what I was after. I wanted like a glowing, vibrant bunch of bananas hanging on this pale blue wall. Again, just there's little areas where I could see some marks, so I'm just taking my pastel stick and fixing up any marks. Now that I've got pastel on every part of the painting, this is where I'm going around. I'm looking what needs to be done. I need to sort out this nail in the wall. It's looking a little bit funny, and I need to finish with the shadow too and the string. So taking a mid-tone grey here from Carbothello and going in with the pastel pencil first. And if I feel like it's not quite enough, meaning it's not saturated enough, the color isn't dark enough or vibrant enough, I can go in with a pastel stick. But pastel pencils are really good just to get that initial shape in. And it may also be like on the wall where it's a soft blue, that this is enough. If I'll tell you it's not, I do fix the shadow, because at the moment the shadow, it's not really reading as shadow. It's because my tonal values are a little bit off. And you can't really see what's going on. It's not making too much sense at the top there. So I decided to work on the string next, and I'm taking my 177. I've got several little 177s running around. This one's nearly finished, and I'm mapping in the string now. Like I said, mapping is actually a really good expression to use when it comes to pastel pencils, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm mapping in where I want my string to go. If I make a mistake or I don't like it, it's so easy to change because it doesn't lay down a lot of pigment. It's not like a Terry Ludwig soft pastel where, to try and get, if you mess up with those pastels, it's really kind of tricky. The darks I'm talking mainly about, it's really, I would hate to do this on this white background, basically. Let's put it that way. So pastel pencils are working really well for me because we're working with such a pale background. So this is a pale grey. It's a pale warm grey. And again, I'm just using that to map out my shadow. And then I'm using that to start to put the light part, where the light is actually hitting the string. But it's not really working. It's looking a bit silly. But don't worry, I do fix it. So it looks a little bit better. Because at the moment it's a little bit unsure of what's going on at the top there. It's not really making sense. But as I go along, hopefully it will start to make more sense. So again, using this just on one side of the shadow to darken. One side of the shadow, going in with the darker grey, sorry. Then coming in with white and kind of making little C shapes to represent the string. I mean, this was tied with white string. I mean, that makes no sense at all. The bananas were tied with the white string. Again, that shadow at the bottom, something isn't making sense. So I'm just taking my black pastel pencil and darkening underneath the nail there. Then a little white pastel pencil to put the highlight on the nail. Back in with a nice Sennelier creamy yellow for the highlight on that part of the banana. It was looking a little bit streaky, So just softening out. Like I said, pastels on every inch of the paper. This is me going around and perfecting, looking at what looks a little bit odd, what needs to change, how's this looking here. This is me playing around now with the little markings that you get on bananas, and again going in with a pastel pencil. Just if I make a mistake, it's easy to correct. So this is my dark brown number 177 by Carbothello. And just going in there and putting in those little details and marks that you get on a banana. Now, I didn't want them to be too marked because, like I said, for me, the main point of this pastel painting is the colors, is this pale blue and this bright lemonish yellow. That is what I wanted the whole painting to be about, really. And if I now go over and I really dent them and put in all the marks that I can see in the reference photograph, I don't want to take away from the color. That's like I said, that's the main thing for me in this one. So you'll see me just going around and putting this dark brown in just certain places, just neatening down at the base there. Got to make it look a little bit neater. It's looking a little bit scruffy. So, you know, as normal, going around my edges here at the top as well, darkening down a little bit. That shadow, I felt like it wasn't quite dark enough, and it was a little wonky donkey. So just neatening up and darkening. So I'm going to leave you here. We have got, what do we have? How's my maths? Not great, not great. 8 minutes. We have about 8 minutes left of me tinkering around. Like I said, correcting anything that looks a little bit wonky or needs to be darker. Or you'll see me work a little bit on the shadow. I'll put some light in the shadow. But I'm going to leave you here just so I don't repeat myself a million times and you get seriously bored. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.